What's valuable to you? I want to start us there. What's valuable to you? It means so much to your life. And go ahead, if you got it in your mind, just go ahead. You don't have to do it like all at once. The first service, they just shouted out everything at one time, and I only got one word out of everybody's answer. But what are some things that are valuable to you? Friendship. Family, peace. Time. The word, kids. Memories. Okay. Did somebody say flowers? I just love flowers. It's so wonderful. Love. Right on. Any others? Him. Okay. Faith. Okay. Right on. Health. See, there's things that are valuable to us, and I think we take for granted the things that are most valuable to us. Y'all didn't call out the one that I was hoping for, which is okay, because I think we take it for granted every single day. Let me throw out some other ones. Air. Is air important for us? Yeah, we need it. A heart is important. I know we live in a technologically advanced day and age where there's probably a fake heart that can be planted into somebody and it keeps them going. Maybe that's old news. I need to read more medical stuff apparently. But what's something else that might be? Food? Do we need food? Food's valuable. I did provide bullet points on this in my notes. So like food for me, top of the list is bacon. Maple bacon to be exact. And I am sustained by maple bacon. If you punch me, or if I sweat rather, you'll probably smell maple. And it's not because I just made pancakes, it's because I'm living off of maple bacon. Okay, I digress. Brisket. Any smoked brisket people in here? I love brisket. But going back on bacon, anybody ever tried bacon-wrapped mozzarella sticks? It's a life changer. I mean, there's salvation, being filled with the Holy Spirit, water baptism, and then like bacon-wrapped mozzarella sticks. Kind of goes in that order. Blood is probably the most priceless thing to us, and we take it for granted. By definition, let's look at the definition of blood. Blood is a body fluid in humans and other animals that delivers necessary substances such as nutrients and oxygen to the cells and transports metabolic waste products away from those same cells. Now that's Wikipedia definition. That's not a medical definition. The medical definition is much more verbaceous than that. That means like extravagantly like different verbiage. I don't even know where verbaceous came from. What's fascinating to me about blood, particularly the red blood cells, there's a whole bunch of different types of white blood cells, but there's just red blood cells from what I gather, based upon my extensive research. Red blood cells will go, I don't know where they start and end. Actually, I do know where they start and end. They start in the bone marrow. Your bone marrow makes blood cells. Then you have vessels that tap into your bones and pull out these new blood cells, right? It's kind of crazy, the human body. You can't tell me that there isn't a God just by looking at the human body. Okay, the blood cells come out, and then they kind of go through the body. Now they go to the lungs. The lungs take in air. They feed the red blood cells oxygen. Then your red blood cells travel throughout your body to deliver oxygen to every nook and cranny of your body. At the same time that it's delivering oxygen to your body, it's extracting toxins. And then it takes those toxins back to your lungs. And so this ought to make you feel super cozy in this environment, in this enclosed space. Every time you breathe out, you're exhaling toxins. How you doing? Right? Like this just makes an enclosed space. Let's just start doing tent meetings because the enclosed space just seems a little bit more dirty than it used to like 5 minutes ago. It's a fascinating travel path that your blood does throughout your body. It brings life, and in the most literal sense, it gets rid of that which is harmful, a.k.a. death out of your body. That's the red blood cells. The white blood cells have all kinds of other purposes. Red blood cells deliver life and take out bad stuff. Kind of sounds like salvation, right? Jesus died on the cross for us, and his blood was poured out to deliver life, but also, as the scripture says, remove my sin as far as the east is from the west. Only the blood of Christ can do that. That's crazy. Now, here's the funny thing about things that we value. What you value, you will spend your time towards that. You will spend your money towards those things. You will give yourself to those things that you value. Our challenge, and I don't have some kind of research to present you, I just look at the way that we live our lives. We have a value issue in our day and age. We value the wrong things. We give our time, our energies, our money to the wrong things often. We value the wrong things. And maybe not you, maybe it's another person. Maybe it's the rest of our world. Maybe it's the rest of our nation. As I mentioned last week in a passing statement, I don't over-inundate myself with information from our culture because it makes me sad. And I don't want to give an unnecessary amount of time to it, because if I give too much time to it, that means that I value it. And I'm allowing it to shape my life rather than what ought to shape my life. So, what's interesting about this whole blood conversation, red conversation, and for the literalist in here, you're like, well, blood, honestly, it's blue. I get it. The blood I'm talking about, though, and that we're going to be talking about over the next 4 weeks, is the blood that has been poured out. And once blood leaves the body, that is when it turns red. And so there's something undeniably powerful that happens with blood poured out. This will be a wonderful and yet painful journey for us as we go through the Red series. I'm just going to lay it out there. There's a level of discomfort that I have of this. In fact, it's not even a level of discomfort. I'm actually just straight up uncomfortable with this conversation of red, of blood. We're going to start in an obscure passage. If you want to go ahead and start turning to Leviticus chapter 17, that's where we're going to find our starting place. The Bible wastes no time talking about blood. I had a conversation with somebody between services about, let me just do a little timeline for us. It's going to be a super small timeline, but God created everything. You have Adam and Eve. They just bomb it by doing what they weren't supposed to do. And it says this, that God made a covering for them out of fur or skin, animal skin. Now, it doesn't say that God killed an animal. One of my college professors, he said that no blood was shed for those garments. If God created the world out of nothing, surely he could create a covering for Adam and Eve out of nothing. It doesn't say there's a blood sacrifice there, but it's insinuated. So the statement that I had made is, well, there wasn't truly any blood shed at that point, and they just politely disagreed, and they did it respectfully, and it wasn't like this clash or anything. But so I don't know that it really matters, other than the fact that God provided something to cover Adam and Eve's nakedness. Covering is the key point there. Cain and Abel start things off really good for us as far as siblings are concerned. And Cain kills Abel. God confronts Cain and he says, hey, where's your brother? I don't know, my brother. Am I my brother's keeper? And God says, what's that I hear? Abel's blood, his blood cries out from the ground. It's interesting to think that blood is verbal, that blood speaks. I'm sure those that deal with blood, they would be able to tell us that, yeah, blood communicates some things. Blood will let us know your health. Blood will let us know your condition. But in this case, blood spoke to God. Interesting thing, if we fast forward to Hebrews, there's a comparison between the blood of Christ and the blood of Abel. Abel's blood was a cry of vengeance and spite. And it says this in Hebrews, that Jesus' blood speaks a better word. Grace, love, forgiveness. You can't tell me that blood's not important. So we go through, there are definitely other blood instances that take place before where we're going to pick up in today in Leviticus 17. Leviticus 17, though, provides us with the best explanation of the value and the power and the appropriate treatment of blood. And this is going to be, I just presume this is going to be uncomfortable for us. But we want to welcome it because I don't want to live in ignorance. I want to live mindfully. Super fast prayer. Father, speak to us by the power of your word. Speak to us with the understanding and the help of the Holy Spirit. Transform our lives. We want to be transformed into your likeness. I pray that you do that throughout, not only today, but as we continue on this Red series, that you would change us and transform us from the inside out. In Jesus' name, amen. Leviticus 17, I'm going to give a real fast synopsis of where we sit. Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, for the most part, got their beginnings, if not all of it, throughout the journeys of the wilderness. And so all the laws that you read about, all of the things that are, some of it is a challenge to get through, like so-and-so begot so-and-so, and so-and-so begot, like it's just a tough read on some of it. But there's law after law after law, and that was provided during the trekking through the wilderness. And what's interesting about the book of Leviticus, if you just cut it in half, Leviticus 1 through 16 is mostly directed towards the priests and their function and their roles and what they're supposed to be doing. And it goes into a lot of detail for their role. And then you have chapter 17, which is like a hinge chapter before it goes on to the rest of the people. And so some scholars have labeled it this way. The first 16 chapters of Leviticus are about the sacred. Then the rest of the book is about the secular, or the what's common of everyday living. And there's some really obscure things that they faced in everyday living. But 17 is this interesting chapter, it's only 16 verses long, that have to do with two things. First of all, their conduct for offering sacrifices. And secondly, the treatment of blood. Such an interesting hinge chapter that's centered on sacrifice and blood. I think it's fitting, though, because the rest of the population, the people, were supposed to bring their sacrifice to the priest, and so it makes sense in that way that it's a hinge chapter. I'm going to read through 1 through 14. You're going to see that there's a lot of repetition on a few pieces, but just enjoy the journey with me, okay? Leviticus 17, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the Israelites and tell them these things. This is what the Lord has commanded. Anyone from the house of Israel who slaughters an ox, sheep, or goat in the camp, or slaughters it outside the camp, instead of bringing it to the entrance to the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord before his tabernacle, that person will be considered guilty. He has shed blood and must be cut off from his people. This is so the Israelites will bring to the Lord the sacrifices they have been offering in the open country. They are to bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting and offer them as fellowship sacrifices to the Lord. The priest then will sprinkle the blood on the Lord's altar at the entrance to the tent of meeting and burn the fat as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. They must no longer offer their sacrifices to the goat demons that they have been prostituted themselves with. This will be a permanent statute for them throughout their generations. Say to them, anyone from the house of Israel or from the foreigners who live among them, who offers a burnt offering or a sacrifice, but does not bring it to the entrance to the tent of meeting to sacrifice it to the Lord, that person must be cut off from his people. Anyone from the house of Israel or from the foreigners who live among them, who eats any blood, I will turn against that person who eats blood and cut him off from his people. For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have appointed it to you to make atonement on the altar for your lives, since it is the lifeblood that makes atonement. Therefore, I say to the Israelites, none of you and no foreigner who lives among you may eat blood. Any Israelite or foreigner living among them who hunts down a wild animal or bird that may be eaten must drain its blood and cover it with dirt, since the life of every creature is its blood. I have told the Israelites this: you must not eat the blood of any creature, because the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it must be cut off. My goodness, we got the message. Any sacrifice, bring it to the entrance of the tent. 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 Don't eat blood. Don't eat blood. Don't eat blood. Don't eat blood. Apparently, these were issues. And apparently, there was a mode or a way of living that God was confronting very strongly. What we don't see, we don't have the privilege of seeing this, but there were several million that were delivered from Egypt. And sometimes we can just read the Bible and we just think that they were all the children of Israel, but really there was so much. I had to really discipline myself to be focused on what I needed to be focused on, but Egyptian history lined up with the Bible history is quite fascinating to see all the other things that were going on around the world at this time, and the power that the Egyptian community, that body of people, they had such power during this time. And there were so many things that happened throughout the course of history that lined up to this moment of the children of Israel being delivered. Part of what took place is because of the overwhelming power that Egypt was, they accumulated several cultures over several hundred years. Now, what's fascinating about this, and this is what historians are uncovering, is that all the cultures that came in ultimately, eventually, came to sort of line themselves up with the Hebrew people. This understanding of one God. Now, up to that point, I think even with Abraham, he was trying to help creation understand that there's one God. There are other cultures, though, that lived for loads of other deities. And they said, no, this is God of this is the God of this is the God of this. And so the whole concept of sacrifice got messed up. It got murky. And so they're delivered, but it's a mixed bag of people. Now think about this. They all saw the same stuff. Those that were delivered also, apparently, if you remember Exodus when they would wipe the blood on the doorposts, that means that these people that are kind of like not wholeheartedly in this whole God thing just yet, they wipe blood on their doorposts, and they were still delivered with the children of Israel. That tells me that we have a super gracious God. And then, so we just read this. If we fast forward to Joshua, being prompted by God, he even said, listen, we're going into this land, but what you need to do, you need to stop sacrificing to false gods. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Why would that need to be said if we just read this here? Don't sacrifice like the other nations do. Bring it to the temple. We're going to unpack all that in a second. Here's another side point to this. I never would have thought Leviticus 17 would have been a section of verses to go to convince me that missionary endeavors, a mission focus in life, reaching the nations, I didn't think it would come from that, but there's so much that's written about the foreigner that's living among them. And God's heart was for all of them. There were still the Hebrews, the children of Israel, the select, right? But there was the foreigner as well. They need to live by this. I'm bringing them into the fold. That tells me that we have, without question, an internationally minded God. He wants to reach the nations. All right. Moses said this to Aaron and his sons and the children of Israel. When you sacrifice, when you kill an ox, a goat, or whatever is sacrificially acceptable, bring it to the entrance of the tent. Well, what's the big deal? I mean, we're talking millions of people, right? That's quite a spread of people. And I'm sure the trek to get to where the sacrifice needed to be made was an inconvenience. We don't live that mode naturally. What I mean by that is we want to say yes to Jesus and live our life for Him out of our convenience. Romans talks about this, like now our spiritual act of worship is presenting ourselves as living sacrifices. The Bible also goes on to say this in other chapters in the New Testament. Don't stop meeting together. There's value in this. There's a kingdom mindset in this. This is hashtag same team Sunday every week. And it's necessary for your soul. It's necessary for your relationship with Christ. It's necessary for your relationship with each other. What does this mean? I mean, we're reading this and we can just let some of the basic things slip by. There's something significant about all the people showing up at the same destination, giving a sacrifice up to the same God. The one God that all these people from mixed cultures, they saw the 10 plagues. They saw the pillar of smoke. They saw the pillar of fire. They saw Mount Sinai rumble. They saw Moses' face glow. All of those people saw the same things, and they're supposed to go to the same entrance, offering sacrifices to the one God that did all of that. Well, what does that convey? It conveys unity. Again, it's said in the New Testament that it is our unity that reveals God. Paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it. It's our unity. God is a jealous God. So He's saying this: don't just make your sacrifice out in the field. Now, for anybody that knows the Word really, really well, you might be able to rattle off some other instances throughout the Old Testament where sacrifices were offered up outside of the tabernacle. Every single one of those were mandated by God. That's the only time it was acceptable. Other than that, you get your butt to the temple, to the tent, to the entrance of the tent, and you offer your sacrifice there. The tent of meeting, the tent of relationship, the tent of fellowship. That's where you do it. We're bringing form to this, while at the same time maintaining the heart of it. I think if there's a dilemma within our wiring as human beings, it's once we think we've got it, as far as our relationship with God is concerned, we turn it into form rather than heart. If we could just keep our faith a matter of heart rather than form and function, our life would be so different. Because what function is religion. It's heartless, mechanical religion. It's just the process, not the relationship. And I don't know if this is kind of like God's mindset, but there might be a small, minute percentage of Him like, I know it's inconvenient for you. It's inconvenient for you to walk through that territory to come to this place where you meet with me, but I'm worth it. I'm requiring that of you. I'm your God. You are my people. We're married. It's so crazy how that is the reoccurring example that we have of our relationship with God is marriage. Remember, for those of you that have been here, we talked about the Ten Commandments being wedding vows. The wedding vows have already happened. So you would think that it wouldn't be any big issue for the children of Israel to come to the one that they are married to. That would be like me staying here at my office to have a relationship with Summer. I know I'm supposed to come home and go through that entrance at home, but I'm just going to stay here because it's just inconvenient to get home. 5 points is just, I don't want to deal with it. Don't even want to deal. I know there's another route, but there's delays at every stoplight, and I don't like where it is at Oak Point. Like at 5 o'clock, I'm just going to stay here. We can FaceTime. And that's what God's saying. He goes, I don't want a distant relationship. I want you to come to the entrance of the tent of meeting for a purpose. The goat demons kind of threw me a little bit. Honestly, when I read that the first time, I'm like, goat demons? But that lets us know that there was still a bit of Egyptian culture ingrained into them, because that is an Egyptian god. And there's all kinds of rhetoric. I'm not going to waste the airspace on goat demons. We just know that that's not where their sacrifices were supposed to be directed. No, you bring them here to me. Be willing to be inconvenienced to meet with me. Now, the way it's supposed to be sacrificed is important. The value that's placed, the value of that moment is calculated and added up by the blood. The value is the blood. See, when they would bring the sacrifice, it was a sacrificially accepted animal. And you know, I'm thankful for today that I get to stand up here in jeans and a button-up shirt, because if it was Old Testament, I would be getting bloody every week. Being a priest was a bloody mess. To kill the animal, and then they would catch the blood of the animal. Remember, the blood that delivers life and takes out death still does the same thing in animals. And so the blood that delivers that sustenance to this animal is the substitute for me. This is my substitute. This animal is being sacrificed for me, for my family, for my tribe. And so the priest would slaughter the animal. There was, like, PETA would be in an outrage. He'd catch the blood, and the priest would sprinkle it on every side of the altar, on all sides. And as he did that, that was the atonement. Atonement means cover. You're covered. You're covered in and by the blood. The blood covers you. Now that you are under the blood, you are in right standing with God. See you next week. A willing to be inconvenienced, I think, is such a confrontation to our culture today. We are people of convenience. Don't we have a mart called Convenient Mart? That everything is tailored to convenience. Everything. Everything is ergonomic. Everything is for our easement and enjoyment and all of that kind of stuff. And God's confronting that. No. There's cost in this. So start living like you've got skin in the game, rather than living out of the comfort of this relationship. So that's the sacrifice. He goes right in. It's like he wastes no breath. He's just like, do this. This is the right way to go about sacrificing. Don't drink blood. Apparently that was an issue. That he needed to say it over and over and over again. Don't drink blood. And verse 11 is the pinnacle of this whole section when he says this. For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have appointed it. I have determined that blood, I've determined ahead of time that blood is for you. I've appointed it to you to make atonement on the altar for your lives. That is the value of blood. They are coming from a culture that trampled and devoured blood, disregarded blood. I wonder for us this morning if we could assess the way that we value blood. I wonder what we would arrive at. What's the value you place on blood? More specifically, what's the value that you place on the blood of Christ? Sadly, I think that we live in a way that we just want to devour it out of our convenience and out of our feel-goods. Let me just nom on God's blood, on Jesus' blood, so that I can be covered, and then I'm just going to go live the way I want to live. He knows my heart. When we live that way, when we take the freedom that's been given to us for granted, when we walk disrespectfully in the grace that we've been given, that's trampling on the blood of Christ. That's devouring. That's getting a big gulp of Jesus' blood and disrespectfully drinking it. The blood of Christ. He was appointed to die on the cross, to pour out His blood, so that it would be a covering for us. What did we say early on? What we value, we will give our time to, we will give our efforts to, we will have relationship with it, or we will relate to it. It will just be, it's just valuable to us. You know what I found to be true in the way that it gets interpreted in our life today, in such a social media driven life? I've learned, and this is no new thing, I've learned that you can see a lot about what people value based upon their social media. There are individuals that would rather go on rants of gun control or what to do with guns, gender stuff, politics, wars, leadership, readily willing to broadcast your convictions because that's what's valuable to you, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in this context here is the blood of Christ and how we live under the blood of Christ. You're just wasting brain space. Yes, those things are important, but it is not the end all to all your life. The last I remember reading through the Bible, the government is on His shoulders. Why are we surprised when we're like, oh my gosh, our government's corrupt? Because people are. It's not a shocker. And I don't care which side you lean on, I really don't care. Because that's not what the it is in my life. And that's not what the it is in here. We're not under a government party in here. We're under the blood of Christ in here. And your life is no different. No politician is welcoming you to heaven. It's the blood of Christ. No stance on some political issue is going to earn your way into heaven. It's the blood of Christ. What you value is something that you will speak to. So what are you speaking to? Now, I'm not saying that from now on all of your social media posts are going to be saturated with red letters and red background, and it's all red, it's all Jesus. I'm not saying be a lunatic. I'm just saying live for the things that are valuable to you, that are invaluable, which is the blood of Christ. Don't stomp on it. Don't devour it. Well, how do I do that? You devour it by living life the way that you want to, rather than the way that He wants you to, because He saved you. And we have the audacity to approach our days of like, nah, I don't want to, I just want to do what I want to do. I want to talk the way I want to talk. There are things that frustrate me, so I'm going to speak to those things. And when we live that way, it's just being flippant with the blood of Christ. He didn't pour out His blood on you to continue to be a jerk or to continue to be nitpicky or to continue to be whatever. Fill in the blank. He didn't die for you to continue to be that way. You're under the blood, so start living like you're under the blood. Do you see why this is so difficult, church? As I'm going through this study, I'm like, oh my gosh, Father, I don't have any right. Because I see patches of my life where I just trample on the blood of Christ because of either things that I say, things that I do. I squander the blood of Christ. And here's the heart-aching part about that, coming to that reality, that acknowledgement. What that legitimately means, let me say it this strongly. Can I lump all of us in this so it's not so landing on just me? When we live that way, this is what we say to Jesus. Jesus, when I live my life the way I want to live my life, I don't value your blood. I don't value your death on the cross. The blood that pumped through your veins, the same way that the blood delivered life to your body, and then you exhaled, and it got your body was just as human as mine, but you're the Son of God. But that blood that was poured out, I don't value it because I would rather live the way that I want to live. That's what we say when we're careless with our social media, when we're careless with our conversations, when we're selfish with our life, when we make bonehead decisions that we know that we're not supposed to make. We trample on the blood of Christ. Don't devour the blood. Because it's the blood. It's the blood. The life of a creature is in the blood, and I have appointed it. There is a predetermined purpose for the blood. It's for you. It's for us. It has been predetermined. He has appointed it to you to make atonement on the altar. So as the sacrifice is slaughtered and the blood is being sprinkled, you are covered, you are right with God, you are free. Don't trample on the blood of Christ. We started by asking the question, what do you value? The question for this week, and if you're going to get anything out of this whole series, you've got to start asking yourself questions, and not only just asking yourself the questions, but answering the questions that are asked. And so this morning, the question goes a little bit like this. What does red mean to you? I've even provided words to help you unpack it. And don't be embarrassed if you have to write down, like one of the words is ignored. Man, I just feel like I ignore the blood of Christ. I ignore what has been poured out over me because of the way that I speak, the way that I live, the way that I love, if you would even call it love. What does red mean to you?